Hello, Caroline. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the second
Me too.
episode of the Wait It Out podcast. So, I'm very excited to introduce Caroline Wang, a biochemistry researcher at the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics. So, it's great to have you with us today. Thank you for joining.
Yeah,
So,
thank you
yeah,
for having
Caroline.
me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Yeah, please feel free to introduce yourself.
All right, well, I am a high school senior at North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics. I'm really passionate about research. It's what I spend a lot of my time doing right now, but on the side, I'm also the programs manager and vice student board chair for Youth Ambassadors of Service. And yeah, outside of those activities, I really enjoy dancing, drumming, and occasionally fencing.
That's great to hear. And for those of you who are new to the podcast, I'm Juman, a student based in North Carolina. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So, Caroline, I'm really interested in knowing if there were any moments or experiences in your early childhood that really developed your love for STEM education.
I think as a child, I'd say my parents were always very encouraging of whatever interests I developed. And so, because of that, I've had the opportunity to explore and engage in kind of the issues that I care about, whether that be like climate change and environment or medical industry. And from that, I've learned that a lot of the things you do within a lot of professions, whether that be STEM, business, or public policy related, all come from a dedication and commitment to the work that you're doing. It does take a ton of time and um, lots of research into whatever realm you're doing. I'd say, especially for research or biochemistry research, we have a specific program at our school where you apply and are accepted, and during the 1 year period in which you do it, it's really just 4 months of that 1 year. We're reading, doing literature reviews, getting like very intimate with the knowledge before even attempting to like add to it. And so I think my parents raised me to be someone who does have a good background knowledge of things before jumping in, and that has helped me a lot in all industries.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm really curious to know if there were any mentors specifically that you had at your school that really helped you grow both personally and professionally.
Yeah, of course. Well, I have a lot of people to thank at my school. The professors there are incredible, and many of them hold PhDs, but also past job experiences doing, for example, my ecology professor did research at the NSF, and that kind of experience then allows her to inform us about what is feasible, unfeasible within our own pursuits. And um, I'd say one person that I in particular have to thank is my research mentor, Dr. Michael Bruno. He has been just a constant source of like guidance and always willing to like stay after class to talk about our projects to, make sure that we're on the right track and we feel comfortable in what we're doing. And mentorship in general, I'd say also on the nonprofit side, Sonali Ratnasinghe, who is the executive director of Youth Ambassadors of Service, has just been incredibly transformative in teaching me like what it means to be a youth leader and what it means to kind of amplify impact.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'd really like to zone in on your biochemistry research at your school. For people who are watching right now who might be interested in pursuing biochemistry research, what quick lessons or actionable steps could they take to start pursuing that?
I'd say my situation is a little unique in that I am doing all my research at my residential campus. And because of that, I have a lot of time, whether that be like in between class periods, before class starts, or even late into the afternoon, to do lab work, bench work, analysis, and finally like writing up my paper, poster, presentations. However, I am a big advocate for citizen science, and there are programs out there, even if you don't go to NCSSM, where you can of course, cold email and reach out to professors doing research you're interested in, but that does take a lot of time and a lot of rejections as well. I'd say probably 15% of those emails you hear back on, and even less you get like a, hey, you can come to the lab and do some work. So if you are really passionate about research and getting that start on knowing the process as well as familiarizing yourself with like symposiums, conferences, submitting to those kinds of events, North Carolina Scientist Society, and CYSS, is a great place to start. That's where I did my environmental research. And yeah, that kind of field environmental environment gives you more observational study data where you go out and like collect things on like air quality, temperature, and how it influences certain things, maybe like bird migratory behavior. But it's very open to public. There's not like a lot of specialized equipment you need for it. And I think that really gives you a deep dive into what it's like to like formulate a hypotheses, go out and do a literature review before really collecting your data and forming like discussion results conclusion.
And what makes you so passionate about biochemistry? Why do you decide to focus specifically on this field?
Yeah, so biochemistry, I'd say I'm interested in it because I think preventative medicine is my passion, and kind of addressing the root cause of chronic diseases is my manganese porphyrin research specifically. So I could go into like a little spiel about my specific research project, or would you just like me to talk about the subject generally?
Yeah, sure, you can go into your research project.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm currently synthesizing or have synthesized a manganese porphyrin, and it's a superoxide dismutase mimic, meaning it imitates the function of the native superoxide dismutase enzyme. And so, what this enzyme does is it takes the harmful free radical oxygens that exist naturally within the body as a byproduct of the mitochondrial processes and respiration, and then it dismutates these reactive oxygen species into less harmful products like peroxide and just regular O2. And this is like a pretty well explored field. Actually, Miss Ines Batnick-Haverhill, who is at Duke University, is like one of the world experts in it, so I think it's really cool that she's local. But my specific contribution to this study was conjugating manganese porphyrin to folic acid, also known as vitamin B9, which then allows for better cellular recognition and uptake. And so that's kind of a precursor and proof of concept to using folic acid with a polyethylene glycol or ethylene glycol chain attached to the porphyrin to like have it enter cells and better membrane permeability. And I think biochemistry in general is just very gets down to the basics of what happens within our cells to make mutations occur, to make things like inflammation that cause a lot of chronic diseases. And so, because of that, I'm very interested in a research career, getting to contribute to such like a broad field, but also like hyper specific in some aspects is my passion.
And are there like many research projects that you do at the North Carolina school? Or is that something that like everyone does in their own time?
So there are two main research options, I'd say, at NCSSM, and students do pursue independent research pursuits, but that is a lot more rare just due to time constraints, classes, whatever. But
Yeah.
the two main ones are departmental research programs, and so we have chemistry, biology, physics, and comp sci, and those are application based. It's closer to the beginning of the year where you get selected into programs that like the research mentors think are best fit for you. And from there, it's you start in January and in the next senior year. So January of your junior year, December of your senior year, throughout that time, you're doing departmental research with a very specific department, like biology, chemistry. But then there's also mentorship, where school brings people to local universities like NC State, Duke, UNC. Um, there may be others, but those are the main ones, and pairs you with a lab that's doing something that you might be interested in knowing more about. And those, I would say, are a little less, they give you less authority, I guess, over your own project because you are just aiding them in whatever research they're doing. Whereas the departmentals, which I've been lucky enough to participate in, allow you to formulate your own research question in whatever field, whatever problem you're trying to solve. And so you can find mentors who are willing to support you and kind of sponsor your time doing separate independent projects. It's just about like time management and finding the right person.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'd
Of
really like
course.
to dive into your work as a programs manager at Youth Ambassadors of Service. So can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so Youth Ambassadors of Service, incredible program by the way. Shout out to them if you're a high schooler looking for like more in-depth volunteer experience, internships, and just general professional development. Go check out our website. Applications open in January. But anyways, I joined as a sophomore in high school, so applications opened, I think, spring of my freshman year, and I thought it was really cool because their Young Nonprofit Fellowship essentially pairs you with a local nonprofit to intern with them for the course of 8 months, and you also have things to do on the YOS side where you're like making a LinkedIn, writing a cover letter, things like that, and getting nonprofit certification courses done. And so throughout my time as a fellowship member, I was able to kind of see the broader impact that I could make beyond just hosting like the occasional book drive or raising advocacy for issues. It was honestly very empowering to see how people my age and myself too could, with the right resources, make a measurable impact that, like, honestly, I wouldn't even imagine. I think my first item drive that was hosted on behalf of my host nonprofit, Empower All, raised around $2,000 worth of books for underserved educational communities. And that was just my first step into YAS. So over the next 2 years, my junior and senior year, I kind of transformed my role from a fellow, which I graduated May of my sophomore year, into a peer mentor of, which is during my entire junior year. And as a peer mentor, I was kind of translating what I learned as a sophomore into advice for like bi-weekly meetings with whatever students requested meetings with me in our Act in Advance program, which is more like introductory. But now I'd say as a programs manager, I've really scaled up my impact, not by doing more work per se, which it is a lot of work, but I'd say it's by doing different kinds of work. So with our student board chair, Shaylin Fofaria, and with our executive director, Sonali Ratnasinghe, as I've mentioned before, we make a lot of structural decisions and initiatives that allow for better student engagement, more opportunities for them to like really get their hands into the nonprofit industry, understand the work that goes into it, and then apply their talents and their time into that. So, for an example, we actually just completed our first like big project period of 2025 for this cohort across both Act and Advance and the Young Nonprofit Fellowship, our two flagship programs. And our students actually raised like $30,000 worth in value of menstrual products, hygiene products, clothing, books, toys, board games, what have you, for I'd say around, yeah, our 41 nonprofit partners. And that was just like incredible to see. And it goes to show what you can do for your community just by showing young people the impact they can make and by empowering them, really giving them the resources to make that change. And another thing, I think as program manager, my role is to give them a structured way of making impact, because a lot of the times as a high schooler you get caught up in schoolwork, you get caught up in friends, socializing, getting enough sleep, right? But being part of a actual program where you have deadlines, where you have certain metrics you have to meet, like making an advertising post or writing your first outreach email, cold email, those are things that kind of keep you on track to actually making a project happen rather than, oh, I have time. I still have like 2 or so years of high school. I'll do this eventually. No, like this puts you on a track where you have to get it done within a certain period of time. And I'm the person who sends out those weekly reminders like, hey, you gotta make your advertising materials now. Hey, you got to actually conduct your drive from this date to this date. And I think that's really where I come in now. And I'm very excited for where we go next. I think YAS is planning to scale up. Hopefully we can become kind of a national program like HOSA or DECA or maybe even Khan Academy if we make an online learning community. But currently that is where I stand.
And what are some key lessons that you drew from the experience?
Good question. I think the I could definitely say like very set in stone pieces of advice that I've heard before, and certainly they're useful. But I think an unconventional piece of advice, or what I want the listeners to take away, is that truly like getting started means more than having a plan for something, because you won't know what you're getting into until you start doing it. Like you can plan for everything. You can have a plan A, plan B, plan C, for every possible outcome, but to actually do it is something else entirely. You face the obstacles as they come, and of course, like preparing is important, but just putting yourself out there and saying, I'm doing this now. Whatever comes up, I'll plan for that and deal with it as it comes. You know, I think I actually made a LinkedIn post on this yesterday, but again, like the friction of getting started is so much more discouraging or hard for high schoolers to get over than continuing to do it as an active project.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I agree with you. Getting started is like the hardest part. And then after you pass that point, it's like everything just becomes so much easier. Um,
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
yeah, moving on towards your future career goals, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Is there like a specific college or major that you want to pursue?
So, in the next 5 years, I do plan to continue learning about biochemistry, getting myself more immersed in that field. I would love to join more research labs. I think that's where I really enjoy spending my time is, getting to make advancements in a field of science. But beyond that, I, of course, intend to stay with Youth Ambassadors of Service. I think it's very important that, especially in a time that's very uncertain, like now, students are already getting themselves immersed in service and like showing up for their communities, because these are the change makers of tomorrow, and getting them acclimated and familiar with the people that they will be serving and building a better world for in the future early is very important to me. And then I guess beyond that 5 year period, I'd love to become a professor. I'm very passionate about education. I think letting those that are younger than us stand on our shoulders, since we stand on those who came before us, is something that I find to be a kind of life mission for myself. So, yeah, research, community work, and education.
And is there any advice that you would give your younger self?
Ooh, my younger self. Okay. Oh, so many lessons I learned along the way. I guess the one piece of advice that I'd tell myself is, hmm, to, and I think this worked out for me really well, which I'm grateful for. So it'd be more like an encouragement to my younger self, but to continue exploring things that even if someone tells you to like stay in your lane, focus on one specific thing to be good at, like of course that's important, and of course like deepening your skills and your career objective is important, but being able to have a breadth of knowledge rather than depth of knowledge, I think is also very valuable because it allows you to connect with more people. And as someone who really likes to bring my connections together, my resources, like say my coaching, yeah, say my coaching director has a lot of extra resources that we don't use on the weekends and are just sitting on the shelves. And then Empower All, which is a education nonprofit for the underserved, needs those resources. I can pull them together. Or if I meet some business leaders that are very passionate about like funding worthy causes but don't know who to fund, I can then pull from my science background or from my nonprofit background. Being able to interact with different communities, I think, has allowed me to form a lot of meaningful projects. And yeah, branching out in that way has been super important to my development as both a scholar and a member of the community.
Thank you for sharing that. And what are the most difficult parts of your work that no one warns you about?
Oh, the long hours and waiting. Like in the lab, actually, okay, in the lab, time will go by fast because there's so much you want to do and just never enough time to do it, right? There's always more development, there's always more tests, assays that you could run. But like actually putting it into an impactful kind of presentation or like getting that word out there takes time and it takes a lot of patience and editing because you'll always think, oh, I'm done. And then someone will be like, no, you need to redo the whole thing. You need to like add so many more edits, so much more development. And that is something that, yeah, so that's something that I've had to learn to be more comfortable with is just constant iteration. Like never really settling with something. There's always something that can be better. There's always something that can be iterated on. And it's hard. I mean, like you at one point you want to just settle down and be like, I'm done. This is good. But in research and in service, when you're dealing with a science realm that's constantly evolving and making new insights, or with a community that constantly has new issues, new problems to encounter, you just have to keep on working. And it can feel really big to go up against at times, but that's, I mean, that's your life work, you know? That is the mission you have committed to, and following through with it is important and it's meaningful.
As we end today's session, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Okay, yeah, I think in this very tumultuous time, there's a lot of uncertainty, I'd say, for a variety of industries. And right now, I just want to urge people to continue investing in science and in their communities because when it feels like the world is kind of like crumbling around you, you want to like focus on yourself and keep yourself and your family at the forefront of your priorities, right? But it's very important to understand that as a people, we advance and we get better by supporting those who are trying to, I guess, bring up the level of innovation and of care for other people. And so go out there and like give a donation to your local science foundation or support your local soup kitchen. Go volunteer. That's my piece of advice for today.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm sure that a lot of people will benefit from this conversation, especially people who are interested in pursuing biochemistry research as they go on to college. So thank you so much, Caroline. I really enjoyed this conversation with you.